This next book came out, I believe, in 2001, and ended up winning the National Book Critics Circle Award, and actually making it onto a lot of bestseller lists. And I usually don't read a lot on bestseller lists, especially fiction, but this one was going around and getting a lot of acclaim for the literary merit that it actually had. And I think that usually those are the kind of books that I'm most interested in, literary fiction, at least as far as fiction is concerned. And it also has a blurb by Susan Sontag, whose work I have quite a bit of respect for, on the back. And the book is Austerlitz by W.G. Sebald, who I'm not sure if it was shortly before or shortly after the book was published, but the same year he published this book, he actually was killed in a car accident at a relatively young age. Many reviewers have cited this book as having it noted the difficulty of the prose, but I find it really tough to comprehend. If you've read Proust and Joyce and maybe even Faulkner, I consider those the real trials by fire. And I mean, even Faulkner isn't, terribly difficult most of the time. But if you've read Proust and Joyce, Sebald's prose is comparatively pretty accessible. Other people have claimed that this is a Holocaust novel, and I find that equally perplexing, I have to say. Certainly, while Austerlitz's childhood, he's the protagonist in the book, his childhood experience of being sent to England via the Kindertransport away from his parents forms a sort of locus for what little narrative drive there is in the novel. The themes of memory and contemporary European identity and its peculiarly unique aesthetic vision are much more important, at least to me, as Austerlitz recounts his story. It may be the case that the perennial complaint of difficulty rests in the fact that its themes are so broadly and deeply intertwined with its pensive inwardness. Excuse me. And Sebald's sort of brooding style. The short and pithy declarative quality of someone like a Hemingway or a M.G. Coetzee could not really effectively evoke the complex, I guess you could use the word anamnestic, having to do with memory, that sort of anamnestic matrix that Sebald is so concerned with building here in the book. It's no coincidence that Austerlitz is never seen without his trusty rucksack traveling everywhere that he goes. That rucksack points directly to Austerlitz's emotional and intellectual and geographical exile, and that he is at home both everywhere and nowhere. These imbricated, interlayered variations on exile, which is really what the novel is all about, much more than anything else, inform Austerlitz. His near autistic attention to the details of architecture in the buildings that he visits during the course of the novel are at their heart the inept attempts of a man who has been cut off from history to radically place himself within it, to recognize his own being and identity within that history, and to entangle himself in some sort of web of meaning in and through which he can find ourselves so often complacent. This novel is so resonant and so beautiful and so rich because Austerlitz's experience isn't the singular independent story that it seems to be. He is a kind of everyman who goads us into a probing search of our own lost histories, just like he's looking for his own. The architecture of lived everydayness of life that goes unnoticed. At the same time, Sebald knows that our experience with history is a dynamic one, in that it shapes us as much as we shape it. In the end, Austerlitz's search for personal belonging, and to use Martin Heidegger's word, Sorge, the German word for care, incites us all to set out on our own revelatory search for meaning and truth and identity. This is a really beautiful book. It's probably one of the novels that most stands out to me that I've read for the last probably 4 or 5 years. I mean, very, very rarely am I so struck by a piece of fiction, even though I read quite a bit of it. This is really beautiful. If you've seen it and were a bit suspicious because of its national bestseller status, as I was, pick it up. I think you might be surprised. Really a beautiful and stunning novel. Austerlitz by W.G. Sebald.